Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and do a quick little comparison between the OnePlus 9 and the OnePlus Nord. Now, as most of you know, the OnePlus 9 is the brand new OnePlus device. The OnePlus Nord was a little bit of a different approach that OnePlus had. They were kind of known as like the flagship killer, as most of you know in the beginning with, and they made a lot of, cheap budget tier phones. But then they kind of switched up, and I guess they kind of lost footing with that. But then they released the OnePlus Nord last year, which was pretty much the main competitor against the iPhone SE2s, the Pixel 4a's, even the Pixel 5, and the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. Now the OnePlus 9, on the other hand, is OnePlus's next tier flagship, and obviously it's more expensive than the OnePlus Nord, and overall it is the better phone. So if you have to pick up either one of these phones, by far, it is the OnePlus 9. It's a overall better package. There are still a lot of similarities between both these phones that surprise me, but again, if I had to pick up one, it would be the OnePlus 9. But as some of you may know, and it's probably not even going to be a surprise, if you already have a OnePlus Nord, I would probably recommend keeping it. Even though I'd rather have a OnePlus 9, the Nord and the 9 are so close to one another that I probably wouldn't go and upgrade from one phone to the other in my opinion. Now looking on the fronts, first off, if you want to pick up either one of these, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the fronts, the OnePlus Nord has that 6.44-inch Fluid AMOLED display, and it's a full HD panel, 1080p, but it's 90 Hz. And I say but it's actually a really good panel. It's probably one of the better panels on a budget tier phone. It didn't feel cheap. It still felt fairly good for the most part, and it was a bit curved, which I actually preferred. I like having a curved display. The OnePlus 9 is a little bit of a flat display. They're both kind of curved at the same way, but the OnePlus Nord I actually like. I think it looks pretty good. But on top of that, you do have that dual camera setup on the front, which is very interesting to see on a, budget tier phone. We saw that on the S10 Plus, and we never saw it again, but we saw it on the OnePlus Nord, which I found really interesting. So the OnePlus 9, on the other hand, has that 6.55-inch Fluid AMOLED display, and this one is also a 1080p panel, and it's actually a little bit of a bigger panel, so keep that in mind. But you don't have a dual camera setup. You have a single camera setup, and I'll get into all those cameras in a second. But you do have that 120 Hz on the OnePlus 9. Is that a crazy big deal? Honestly, it's not like a groundbreaking achievement, but I like having 120 Hz over 90 Hz. I like that a lot. I think those things are cool, and those are really nice additions. And I definitely do think the OnePlus 9 takes the cake for the better panel, but the OnePlus Nord's panel is still plenty of good for a lot of people out there, and it's still extremely good in my standpoint. But I do think the OnePlus 9 is a better panel for sure. On the bottom, USB Type-C ports on both, nothing on the sides except the volume buttons and the power buttons, no micro SD card slots, but you do have IP68 certification on the OnePlus 9 on the T-Mobile version only apparently. The OnePlus Nord does not have any model that supports IP certification. On the back, glass backs on both. You do have wireless charging on the OnePlus 9, which is really cool. The OnePlus Nord does not have any wireless charging, and you have their camera setups, which I'll get into in a second. Now, feeling them in the hand, they're both going to be kind of feeling like the same thing. I think the OnePlus 9 is going to feel more like a flagship, but the OnePlus Nord, as I mentioned before, really wasn't that cheap of a phone. It did have a plastic frame versus the aluminum frame on the OnePlus 9, but take it as you will, but I do think the OnePlus 9 is definitely the better feeling phone when it comes down to it. Now, hitting on the cameras, the OnePlus Nord had that quadruple camera setup, so it had that 48 megapixel wide, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel depth, and the 2 megapixel macro lens, where the OnePlus 9, on the other hand, had that 48 megapixel wide, 50 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 2 megapixel depth sensor. Now, say what you will, some people may actually be looking at the OnePlus Nord and see that it actually does have that quadruple camera setup and automatically assume it's better. That is not the case. The OnePlus Nord's camera on the back is good. Actually, it's actually not that bad of a camera. Tapped out of 4K at 30, so no 4K at 60, but it's still a fairly decent camera lens for the most part. The OnePlus 9, on the other hand, definitely takes the cake for the better camera on the back. You're getting 8K capability on the back of the OnePlus 9. That is a pretty big achievement for that specific device, and having that type of capability, in my opinion, is actually a really cool thing. I love seeing that type of capability, 4K at 60 as well, and that automatically makes the OnePlus 9 that much better of a camera on the back. On the front though, I will never understand this. This makes absolutely no sense to me. The OnePlus 9 has a 16 megapixel sensor. The OnePlus Nord, like I mentioned, has that dual camera setup, so a 32 megapixel wide and then an 8 megapixel ultra wide. Apparently you can do 4K at 60 on the OnePlus Nord's front camera. The OnePlus 9, on the other hand, only 1080p. This makes absolutely no sense for a phone that spent, for a manufacturer that spent that much money on that specific camera lens, like millions and millions of dollars with Hasselblad, and they didn't even improve the front camera. that's something that shocked me a lot because I wasn't expecting OnePlus to do that kind of thing, and they ended up doing it, and it's just another one of those situations where OnePlus just kind of self-sabotaged themselves. So take it as you will, but that's kind of how I see this. I think the OnePlus 9 has the better back camera. The OnePlus Nord may have the better front-facing camera, especially with that additional ultra-wide sensor. So in terms of that pretty much covers up the camera aspect. Now hitting on another really awesome thing about both of these phones, it's actually the software and a little bit of the battery life. So first of all, the software, they're both running Oxygen OS 11. Theoretically, the OnePlus 9 is going to be lasting longer than the OnePlus Nord. I'm going to assume that the OnePlus Nord is going to last something along the lines of a OnePlus 8, so it's going to be getting software updates for quite a bit of time. And as I mentioned before, this is another huge asset for a device like the OnePlus Nord. The software is the biggest asset in my opinion, more than the camera, more than the screen, more than anything. If you look at a phone like a Galaxy S20 FE and a phone like a OnePlus Nord, the software is beautiful. It's like the biggest asset it has. And when you look at a phone like a OnePlus 9, it's the software as well. So if you want a phone that's going to last you the longest amount of time, the OnePlus 9 is definitely the better way to go. It's going to last you longer. It's going to be, I guess, a smoother phone overall, and you have the 120 Hz, so that's another pretty big advantage of it. But the OnePlus Nord does have the same software for now, so I wouldn't go from one phone to the other just based on, just the software itself. So keep that in mind. But the battery life is another one of those areas that I'm really happy about. The OnePlus Nord has that 4115 mAh battery. The OnePlus 9, on the other hand, has that 4500 mAh battery. So you're getting a bigger size battery on the OnePlus 9, and you're getting wireless charging on that device too. So that's another pretty big advantage of that device. And I think when it comes down to it again, the OnePlus 9 is probably the better phone. It is the better phone, but the OnePlus Nord is right behind it. The OnePlus Nord isn't that far behind in those two categories. So that's another pretty big advantage of that phone. So this is, I think, one of the best areas of the OnePlus Nord, and one area that really helps shine, the significance of this type of phone, especially at that cheaper price tag. So in terms of that pretty much covers up that area. Now ending it off with the performance, the OnePlus Nord has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G chipset, which was about the same thing as we saw in, I think, like the Pixel 5 or something like that. And it also has a couple different models. The base model is 6 gigs of RAM, the mid-tier model 8 gigs of RAM, and the top-tier model has 12 gigs of RAM, where the OnePlus 9 has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset with two different models, 8 gigs of RAM and then 12 gigs of RAM. And what I can tell you about this type of device's performance for both of them is that the OnePlus Nord is the slower phone, but the OnePlus 9 isn't really that much crazy faster in my opinion. I've compared so many phones with the same exact specifications, the 765G and the 888, not only just these two phones, and I saw time after time that those phones were still doing extremely well. They weren't that far behind, and that is a very important thing to keep in mind. When you have a device like both of these, you want a device that's going to be able to handle everything you throw at it, and these two phones are definitely neck and neck. Obviously depending on the RAM variants and all that stuff, but if you get the same type of RAM variants, you're really not going to notice that big of a difference, and that is probably one of the most important things that I saw between both of these phones. You're not really going to be feeling like you're missing out on too much. You're not going to feel like, one phone is way faster than the other one. The main thing to keep in mind, as I mentioned time and time again, is that yes, the OnePlus 9 is going to be the faster phone because it has to be, because it's the newer one. OnePlus spent a lot of money on it. It has the newer chipsets, and that's really it. But if the OnePlus Nord had, the 888, it would be just as fast, but it's really not that far behind. The main differences here, obviously there's a little bit of a difference in the GPUs as well, but day-to-day tasks are going to be roughly around the same. I feel like it's not until you get into that heavier intensive gaming, those Real Racing 3s, time after time, or those like Fortnite games you're playing, or whatever, like first-person shooters, those type of things are going to take it up a notch on both devices, and you may start to see some glitching on the OnePlus Nord where the OnePlus 9 is going to be perfectly fine. But as I mentioned before, other than that, I think both phones are going to be extremely good, and I think the OnePlus 9 is faster, but the OnePlus Nord is right behind it in my opinion. So in terms of that covers that area. Now to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, should you buy a OnePlus 9 or should you buy a OnePlus Nord? This is what I'll tell you. I think if you're trying to find the best bang for dollar and you're trying to get the best value for every single phone possible, I think the OnePlus Nord is probably the better way to go. You're getting it's a phone that's already been out for a couple of months now, not quite a year, but it's already depreciated in both the, used market on Amazon, but also the certified refurbished market. So you can easily pick up this phone for much cheaper than what you may have, bought it brand new not too long ago. Obviously the OnePlus 9 is going to see the same thing as well. So like in a couple of months, the OnePlus 9 is going to go down in value as well. But I think the OnePlus Nord is probably the better value per dollar, but the OnePlus 9 is the better phone. The OnePlus 9 hands down is the phone I would rather have. It's the phone I would rather buy. I mean, when you look at the front, there's a lot of similarities. Obviously, you're getting, I guess, a better feeling phone on the OnePlus 9, but the OnePlus Nord still looks almost identical. You're getting a better front-facing camera on the OnePlus Nord, in my opinion, but you're getting a much better back-facing camera on the OnePlus 9. USB Type-C ports on both, better battery life on the OnePlus 9, wireless charging on the OnePlus 9, which is another thing. Longer software support on the 9, and better performance on the 9 as well. But the OnePlus Nord, as I've said time and time again, isn't that far behind. It's just a little bit behind. It's not really that big of a difference. So I think if you're going to go from one phone to the other, I mean, going from the Nord to the 9 makes more sense than vice versa, but I wouldn't go from a OnePlus Nord to a OnePlus 9. If you're coming from like a OnePlus 3T or something like that, then going to the OnePlus Nord or the 9 are going to be, monumental upgrades either way. I would probably have like something like a OnePlus 9, but either or, you can't go wrong. And if the OnePlus 9 was a 10 out of 10, the OnePlus Nord I think is like at least like an 8.9 out of 10, to be honest. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.